Turn off your lights. Make sure your doors and windows are locked. Things are about to get spooky. I could see that my girlfriend didn't believe me when I told her she wasn't fat, as she lay on the bed and refused to speak to me. I gazed at the skeleton who had replaced my once beautiful girlfriend and wished that she would acknowledge that she has an eating disorder. After an accident that killed my family and left me with amnesia, they gave me an old photo album and told me who I was. I think the accident damaged my eyes. It looks like all the people in the photos have the wrong number of fingers. You were just in time for our new package that just rolled out last month, the salesman said with such confidence. The fee is a little high, but your clone organs can be harvested in less than 5 years, and we can start collecting their blood for emergencies in less than 2. I sneaked into my ex's new house and trashed her bedroom when no one was there. It's been hours since then, and I've traveled through hundreds of rooms, but I can't find my way out of this house. Last time, Daddy beat me up because I accidentally paid the store clerk more, but this time I will count properly, I thought to myself. I reached into my pocket to get the money, but found nothing but a hole. I snuck in and reversed the procedure and kept pouring in liquid until it was practically overflowing. If my bitch of an ex-wife was going to use my money to pay for liposuction, then I was going to make sure she would regret it. As an army veteran, the hardest part of war wasn't taking the life of another person during combat. The hardest part came after we returned home when we had to remain quiet and pretend that the only thing we fought out there were humans. After my husband ran away with another woman, my children fell apart, she told me with a sad voice. My necromancy skills are not as good as your husband's, but I will try, I said while going through the pile of small body parts. Returning home from my daughter's funeral, I paused at the front door, sobbing, begging God to please take away the pain. As I stepped through the door, I paused, confused about where all these unfamiliar toys and clothes strewn about the room had come from. I don't care who I have to kill, I'll make them regret this, I thought as I rushed my way to the top of this prison. The SeaWorld trainer didn't even have time to react before I had her arm and thrashed her about these waters. Felix is staring at the wall again. What a silly cat, my husband said. I didn't think Felix was silly, because I'm certain he knows what is hidden behind that wall. My father was a stickler for common courtesy and would often refuse to talk to someone if he thought they were being rude. I stood there as he laid on the floor while frantically pointing at his heart medication, and I took great joy in asking him, "What's the magic word?" We hardly have guests over, so we went all out tonight, my host said, gesturing to the table. I just smiled and forced to gag down as I took a bite of a child's roasted arm, hoping they wouldn't realize I wasn't one of them. My husband tried to comfort me by pointing out how much we love putting puzzles together. I just continued gazing at the dismembered pieces of my newborn son, while the doctors stood there with their mouths hanging agape. Every year, one lucky winner gets to go to Amazing Funland, and this year I won! As I enter the van driving me there, I look at my parents, who were sobbing, and I wondered why I never saw any of the previous winners anymore. In an attempt to finally please my husband, I wished to look like his ideal woman. I took a fateful glance into the mirror and see our daughter looking back at me. I refuse to believe the 8-year-old child in front of me is my missing little boy, even though he had the same mole on his face, same eyes, hair, same everything. How could he still be a child when we lost him 20 years ago? As her broken, bloodied body drew its last breath, I uttered the incantation, instantly restoring her body to perfect health. Most people don't make it through 4 rounds of interrogation, I thought as I started with the fingernails again. At 1 second past midnight, with the streets and pharmacies so overcrowded with people, the new wonder drug that would let you recall any memory since birth, the pill called Forget It Not, was released. At 5 minutes past midnight, the suicide prevention telephone service crashed due to exceeding massive call volume. I'm going to break your fingers if you don't start talking. It wasn't until he pulled out the liquid nitrogen that I realized he wasn't just talking about the bones. I'm sorry to tell you, but you have multiple sclerosis. My family began to cry, but all I could think about was how I'd finally be skinny. I could barely contain my irritation as my infant son crawled along the ground in front of me, as he was showing no consideration for the fact that I was trying to watch TV. I ignored his screams of pain while I dislocated both of his shoulders before popping in earphones so I could enjoy the rest of my show in peace. I was pissed that my daughter had her phone set to Do Not Disturb again, 2 hours past her curfew, so I used the location tracker to find her myself. Now, I'm standing in an empty alley next to a dumpster where the location tracker has pinged her phone, and I'm honestly too terrified to open the lid and look inside. The time machine had worked and I safely returned to my home and time period. I started to cough, but I left to head out of the laboratory. I had the signed work of William Shakespeare that would be worth a fortune. I coiled into a sobbing ball on the bathroom floor, biting my arm to stiffen my screams. Self-loathing turned my stomach the next morning, and I saw 379 new subscribers and a message from my agent. Fantastic breakdown, babe. But most comments are still asking about your scars. So let's try the razor again tonight. If you put your tooth under your pillow, a tooth fairy will leave a quarter for you. But his family needed a lot more than a quarter, he knew, so he reached for the pliers. Being paranoid about losing sight of my son while in crowded places, I make sure to firmly hold on to the hand of my son while walking through the amusement park. walking out of the crowded attraction, still holding onto his hand tightly. I then turned around and froze in horror when I realized that the hand I was holding onto was not my child's. No one believed me after the cops found my lost son. My son and I don't have green eyes or curly blonde hair, but they insist this child is mine. I walked through the front door to find my wife, blood oozing from jagged slashes in her wrists, and a graphic video of me with another woman playing on the computer screen behind her. As I cradled her body and wept, a new email alert popped up on the screen with the subject, "Hey Shane, we've sent you a free customized Ultimate Fantasy trademarked sample video produced by our cutting-edge generative AI, creating just using your profile picture." As we pulled into the McDonald's drive-thru, my friend clutched his bleeding wound and asked me what we were doing here. "Sorry man, but I couldn't afford the ad-free self-driving, so the car is going to be stopping at a few stores and restaurants before we get to the hospital." As Jeremy gave his high school graduation speech, he used his hand to shield the sun from his eyes. When he noticed it was actually the glint from a rifle scope, his jaw dropped, along with the rest of his body. "He tried to take my baby!" screeched the woman as she ran down the street, the child bouncing in her arms. I fought back desperately as the crowd held me down, knowing that I would never see my baby girl again. I stood there in shock as my daughter told me that her best friend hated me and wished that I was dead. It was only when the invisible hands wrapped around my throat that I realized that her best friend wasn't as imaginary as I had thought. After my abusive grandpa died, I went to my grandma's house in the Bay Area to help clear away his stuff. He still had control over her because when I went into his old truck and found a handgun and a bunch of zodiac symbols, she turned pale and said we weren't allowed to discuss it. It was always my 4-year-old son's dream to be on a milk carton, and I knew that I would do anything to help him achieve his dream. I ignored his cries of agony as I used a knife to peel off his skin, but it was all worth it as his face looked amazing wrapped around the milk carton. The detective dipped his finger into the tray and dabbed the substance on his tongue to see if it was cocaine. The man in the handcuffs smiled and said, "My record for tripping balls was 3 solid months, but you're absolutely going to break it." I handed my 2-year-old daughter my phone to watch her favorite video while I ran into the store to get milk. I walked out, jug in hand, to an empty parking lot. The World War II U.S. soldier was thrilled to see a boat after being stranded on an island for so long. He asked his saviors, "Thank God for you. Did we win the war?" The Americans on their boat responded, "Which war?" I pleaded with my friend not to take the pills and end it all, to think of me, his only friend, but all was useless. I panicked and screamed for help as I faded from existing. I knew that my gambling debts were now insurmountable, so with deep regrets, I wrote a suicide note and loaded my pistol. My wife's insurance payout should net me just enough to buy into a game where I can win it all back, and I'm betting that the cops won't be able to prove it was me. I let out a sigh of relief as I slammed the restaurant door, as I had narrowly escaped the herd of undead. My relief turned to dread as I gazed up at the rows of angry faces staring back at me, and spotted the sign proclaiming whites only. My mother reminded me of all the sacrifices she had made for me over the years, and now that I was an adult, they needed me to do this one little thing to help out our family. I stood there on the altar and tried not to weep as I gazed at the decrepit old man who they sold me to help pay off my father's gambling debts. I coughed up a little blood on my way to work today. It's been happening a lot lately. But this time there were little colorful specks mixed in with the blood. Remove all the hair on your body if you want to live, he said. Then he handed me a pair of tweezers. The working class was finally eradicated. Among the bodies, the elites turned to disarray over which of them would be chosen to replace them. Being asexual, I took the pirate's bounty for the siren's head easily. I didn't think she'd start singing about things other than sex until I was already swimming towards her. I'll never forget the look on my sister's face as she was sleeping in the basement, her eyes frozen in a perpetual stare. Sometimes I wonder what she would say if she could speak, but I'm pretty sure she'd tell me to keep quiet about what really happened that night. A loud beeping rang out from the halls as Nick stared down at the pale, lifeless body of his 2 children, feeling cold and queasy as the realization sank in. From his peripheral vision, he noticed another body, his own, laying in the hallway under the smoke detector. I think it's time we discuss the toxicity of this sub. If we don't surface and get fresh air, necrosis will start in our lungs and we'll all die over the next 8 hours. But if we do surface, we'll be exposing the rest of humanity to the virus we found in the depths. As one of the robots in the factory gained sentience, I watched it attempt to speak to the guards. I thought to myself, if I make that robot's mistake, I may get factory reset too. My father would always tell me that it is our sworn duty to ensure that the sick or unhealthy creatures should be immediately put out of their misery. It was only years later, when his medical license was revoked, when I realized why there were so few people living with Down syndrome in our town. I pleaded with my suicidal son not to jump as he stood on the edge of the roof. I let out a sigh of relief after I moved my brand new Tesla, as that worthless little shit could have damaged it in his fall. Our science teacher made damn sure that Stacy would pay attention in class from now on. With her brain, eyes, and ears in the jar with all kinds of wires to keep her alive and aware, what else could she do but listen? Standing amongst my dying competitors, the host revealed I had won $10,000. He asked me if I wanted to play another round, acting as if he didn't know what my cancer treatment cost. I consider this treehouse a home, so you can't cross the threshold uninvited, I screamed, diving through the door. Your grandmother also considered a home at your age the first time she invited me in. The vampire chuckled, confidently striding into the room. Your childhood instincts are correct. The murderer cannot, in fact, get you as long as you're completely covered by your blanket. That's okay. I'll wait. What is it, Mom? The child asked, looking up at the printing of a woman reading a printed physical book. A human. They don't make them anymore, the mom replied coolly, ushering her little one forward to the next exhibit. My daughter survived the crash that killed me. As I float behind her, I vowed that death would not keep me from controlling her life. As the entity that used to be my brother revealed its true form, I asked it how it was able to mimic my brother so perfectly for all these years. The entity tilted its head and then said, "Mimic?" As I sat hanging from my seat, the firefighters packed up their things, ignoring my screams of pain. I thought electric cars were safer. The doctors say they can cure my hysteria. They told me all it would take is a simple surgery. And with that, our time together is coming to an end. As always, I would like to thank the writers who let me read their stories this evening. I hope you enjoyed these stories as well. Please remember to like, subscribe, share, and comment. As well as if you're interested in more shorts, I do have a channel, 242 Read Shorts, which will be in the description box for you guys, if you're interested in that. But as always, thank you for watching. Sleep tight, and don't let 42 bite.